Joyski Chapter 9 Elementary School. Student bails his teacher out of jail. When we practice loving kindness and compassion, we are the first ones to profit. Rumi. In my book, Relentless Generosities of Spirit, I told the story of how my family survived a civil war in Nigeria, in which more than 1 million people died by starvation alone. The war was between Biafra and Nigeria. My family has been on the run as refugees and lived in many parts of eastern Nigeria. We returned home to our village, Afikpo, to find devastation. Our homes had been demolished by warplanes. The village was a ghost town. Like all the returning refugees, my family had to start over and try to rebuild. My dad, a British trained physician and homeopath, restarted this practice, treating returning refugees and wounded soldiers. Since there was not much money in circulation at the time, the barter system was implemented. As time went on, my family began to make rapid economic recovery. This attracted the attention of the new military government. Thanks to our neighbors, the period following the Civil War was a tense time. Soldiers patrolled the streets and anyone could be arrested for practically any reason and detained based solely on secret evidence. Any well-established civilian was also viewed as a potential threat to the new government. About 8 months following our return to Afikpo, 2 military land robbers arrived at our family compound with 6 soldiers armed with machine guns. My father was arrested on the spot. He was instructed to board one of the land robbers. Upon asking where the soldiers were taking him, he was simply instructed to enter the jeep. At this point, Dad felt his life was potentially in danger. He asked to have at least one family member accompany him. That way, if anything were to go wrong, there would be someone to give an account to the village. After much deliberation, the soldiers agreed on one family escort. You can probably guess who was chosen as his companion. I jumped nervously into the backseat of the land rover with my father. Upset by the development, my mother and the rest of the family members ran after the jeeps as they sped away to an undisclosed location. It was an airy journey. No one talked. The soldiers had obviously been instructed not to communicate with us. Dad's expression showed he was concerned about the family he had left behind. We were arrested at about 6 p.m. By the time we reached our destination, it was almost midnight. I was quite distressed by the whole affair. By this time, I was 9 years old. I could not understand why we were being subjected to more suffering. After the war, I asked my father what had happened and was disappointed by his explanation. Our neighbors reported to the army that I was making unusual financial progress while everyone else was still struggling. He explained calmly. He said I should sleep and not worry too much about it. The fact that we were suffering because of jealousy directed at my family saddened me considerably. About 7 the next morning, we were transferred to a larger prison in Enugu City, where we started to serve our jail sentence for an undisclosed offense. On our way to the new prison, I looked out the window and noticed many cars on the road with civil servants rushing to work. Street vendors were busy selling newspapers, fried food, and soft drinks. This was all refreshing to me because my village Afikpo was not as developed as Enugu. I was starving. We had not eaten for almost a whole day. From the jeep, I could smell the appetizing fried foods like plantains, fried bananas. Momentarily, my mind wandered to Mom's delicious cooking, but it was not for long. We had arrived at the prison, at new prison. The prison was filled to capacity with Fiapran prisoners and others, most of them completely naked and quite dirty. Sanitation was so poor, the entire police station smelled like a failed toilet that had not been flushed for a month. I suspected the cells were not equipped with functional toilet facilities. The appearance of the prisoners was absolutely nauseating. Monkeys caged in the zoo were in paradise compared to what the prisoners experienced. Fortunately, my father and I were detained in a separate area away from the field. In contrast to the condition in which the other prisoners were kept, you could say that we received VIP treatment. The police were aware of my dad's social standing. They showed respect by detaining him away from the field. Still, in spite of the cleaner detention area, we could not escape the odor, nor could we escape the obscenities that were part of the prisoner vocabulary. It was absolutely overwhelming. Many of the prisoners were crying and begging Papa to help them. Since there was no charge against me, the police allowed me to wander out of the prison and walk about the police barracks. By some good fortune, the chief of police was compassionate toward me. He called me over and gave me some money to buy food from the street vendors. I went out to the street and purchased some fried peanuts and Fanta orange soft drinks from the street vendors, then brought them back for Dad. The money was not enough to buy the fried plantains I had hoped to enjoy, but I made do. When I returned, my father looked worried. I could tell he was concerned because when he worried, he did not say much. I felt sorry for him and wished he would somehow be rescued. Luck was on our side. The news of that detention had spread around Enugu like wildfire. It was the talk of the town. We later learned Dad was well known among civil servants in the eastern region because before going to England to study medicine in the early 19th centuries, he had been a school teacher. He was later promoted to Federal Inspector of School for the Eastern Region of Nigeria. This position brought him in contact with all schools in the Eastern Region and the Federal Ministry of Education. The news of our detention reached one of my father's former elementary school students, who was now a well-established civil servant living in Enugu with his wife and 2 children. He could not believe his ears when someone informed him that the police were detaining Dr. Okogere. He rushed to the police station to verify that this man was the same Okogere who had taught him in elementary 6. When he met my father in person, it was such a moving moment. He screamed out of sheer excitement at the sight of Dad, then rushed to hug his elementary school teacher, to whom he credited his professional success. Dad, on the other hand, could hardly recognize his former pupil, now himself a father. The man quickly negotiated with the police, paid my father's fine, and bailed us out of prison. He then invited us to meet his wife and children. His wife was pleasant. She prepared a feast of steamed rice with a spicy fresh fish stew in a coconut sauce and a separate dish of pounded yam with egusi soup. Fine Nigerian dishes for a 9-year-old boy who had not seen a proper meal in days. I was quite delighted. The meal was so satisfying that I fell asleep shortly after. We spent 2 days with this family. In the meantime, Dad's former pupil arranged for our transportation to Afikpo and gave us presents to take home to our family. It was a great pleasure to rejoin my family in the village, to be able to play with my brothers and friends once again was a source of tremendous exhilaration. My gratitude to my father's elementary school student was boundless. Sometimes people are in a hurry to reap the fruits of their labor, not realizing that nature takes care of all that. My dad reaped the rewards of his services as school teacher 25 years later. By Zil Okogiri.